Hi everyone, it's Alice, and today I thought we could have a chat about some of the cozy books on my TBR, in part because we're in cozy season, and in part because I'm hoping this will remind me to actually get to these books. Cozier books are great to read all year round, of course, but I usually don't gravitate towards them unless we're in a sort of cozy season, so like fall and winter. And I just feel like it's easier to get cozier with these kinds of books when it's like a little dark outside, a little chilly, you can light some candles. I don't need to explain this, you get it. We're going to start with a book that I am gonna have to read when it's fall because it looks like this. It's The Pumpkin Spice Cafe by Laurie Gilmore, and this is like a small town romance with a little bit of mystery in it, I think. And it has like a grumpy sunshine thing going on in it, which I'm into. It follows this woman who's given this cafe by her aunt in this lovely little town, and our main character has like a dull desk job, and so she jumps at the chance to go and run this cafe and move to this little town. And she gets there and it's lovely, and I think that the romance interest is a local to this town. He's a farmer and he like immediately hates her like sunshine disposition, so you know, we know who the sunshine is and who the grump is, and I'm guessing they get together. I'm not expecting much more from this than just like a fun, light, cozy romance, so I'll have to pick this up when I'm in the mood for that. I did think of one thing though. Surely this author name must be a pseudonym, because there's no way it's that close to Lorelei Gilmore, like by chance. It must be. Also because I've read that this is like for fans of Gilmore Girls. I don't know. I should have maybe looked that up. But either way, I'm excited to read this. And if the town in this is like Stars Hollow, it's gonna be amazing. For the second book, I do have slightly higher expectations. It's Shady Hollow by Juneau, and this is set in a small town of woodland creatures, and we are following this fox who is a reporter, and she's just moved to this little town, and a while after she gets there, this toad dies, and I think that she thinks that it's a murder. I don't know if it seems like it's an accident and only she thinks it's a murder or whatever. I think this toad has been murdered, and she investigates this case, and it's pretty obvious that someone is trying to keep her from solving it, and I'm assuming whoever's doing that is the murderer. I also know that we have a moose running a cafe or a coffee shop in here, which I just think sounds amazing. I can't wait to meet this moose. And this just sounds like fun and a little whimsical, and I'm very excited to see all of these woodland creatures. Then we have a prequel to a book that I loved. It's Bookshops and Bonedust by Travis Baldree, and this is the prequel to Legends and Lattes, which I just absolutely loved. Like, it was so cozy, and I loved the world, and I loved reading about the characters, so I'm really excited to see what this is gonna be like. It follows the same main character as in the first book, but I guess she's still in her mercenary days in this one, and I think what happens is that she gets injured and she has to recuperate in this small beach town, and I'm guessing she hangs out in a bookshop. It says that it's a story of first loves, so I'm guessing there's a little bit of romance in here as well, and it seems like although this sleepy little town seems amazing, there is something brewing under the surface. I'm excited to read more about this character that I loved so much in Legends and Lattes, and it'll just be really nice to revisit this world. The first book was so cozy, so I'm expecting some of the same vibes from this. I'm also really excited to meet whatever side characters we have, because that's one of the things that I loved about Legends and Lattes, and this does mention something about a gnome, so we'll see. The next few books that I have are all mysteries on the cozier side, which I love reading, starting with A Spoonful of Murder by J.M. Hall. And the reason that I got this book is that it follows a group of pensioners, and there's something about books with elderly main characters that I just absolutely love, so whenever I find one, I usually just get it. It says that every Thursday, these 3 retired school teachers gather at this cafe to eat some cake and catch up and probably gossip a little bit. And I think one of these Thursdays, this other like colleague that they used to work with drops by, and they haven't seen her in ages, and then the next week she's murdered and they get like involved in the case somehow. really know what to expect from this. I don't have super high expectations. I'm just hoping it will be like an enjoyable read. Then we have Arsenic and Adobo by Mia P. Manansala, which I love the cover of, and I especially love this little dog here. A dog on the cover will get me every time. Although, to be fair, it doesn't take a lot for me to want to get a book, so I don't know how much that means, to be honest. This one follows a woman who moves back home after a terrible breakup, and she starts working in the family restaurant. And she has to deal with this heartbreak, but also all of these matchmaking aunties who want to get all up in her business. And then, because this is a mystery, I think this food critic comes to the restaurant and drops dead, either in the restaurant or like after having eaten the food there, and the police suspect the people in the restaurant, and so they have to figure out what has happened. I don't actually know if there is a dog in this story, but if there is a sausage dog in it, I will be very excited. Next, we have a book that came out this year that I'm super excited about. It's How to Solve Your Own Murder by Kristen Perrin. And this says that it's for fans of Knives Out and the Thursday Murder Club, which, like, if that's the vibe, I'm gonna love this. It follows the niece of this woman who was foretold in her teens at this, like, country fair by a fortune teller. She was told that she was gonna get murdered, like that's how she's gonna die, and she spent her whole life trying to avoid it, I guess. And she lives in this huge mansion, and she has all of these secrets, and she's kind of like a recluse, and I think she dies, and the niece has to try to figure out what has happened. I don't know how she gets involved in it. I think maybe she's supposed to go there to visit, and then by the time she gets there, the aunt is dead or something. I don't know. It sounds interesting though, and apparently this mansion is set in this small village, which is really intriguing, and I just have a really good feeling about this. I'm hoping it's gonna be fun and not too dark. Like, that's the vibe I'm getting from it. But if it does have some dark elements to it, I do like that as well. Moving on, we have a little bit of a different kind of cozy book. It's Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. And this is translated from Japanese, and it's set in Tokyo in this little back alley where there's a cafe that has been there for over 100 years. And they serve this special kind of coffee that lets you travel back in time. How that time travel works, I don't really know. I can't quite tell if it's actual time travel or just people traveling back in their own memories, but it'll be interesting to see. And I think we meet 4 people who do that at this cafe. It also mentions something about something bad happening if they don't get back in time, which is like by the time before the coffee gets cold. I don't know what happens if they don't make it back in time, but maybe we find out. I don't really know, but I do love reading translated books, and I have heard a lot about this book, so it'll be interesting to read. Then we have a book that I've had on my shelves for ages, and I don't think it's straight up cozy. I think it's more the kind of book that has like cozy vibes. It's Wildwood by Colin Meloy and Carson Ellis. And I think the thing that has kept me from reading this book is that it's kind of chunky, and that always freaks me out. The story, though, follows 2 friends who uncover this secret world, but I think this world is in the middle of like a war or something, so there's a lot going on there, and I think they end up getting entwined in it somehow. This is a middle grade book, so I don't have like huge expectations for it, but it is illustrated. It has all of these illustrations throughout, which I like, and I'm excited to see this world and like what's going on with it. It is quite long though, but the font is pretty big, so I should just read it. I've had it for ages. The next one I have is also beautiful, and again, this is more of like a cozy-ish book more than just like straight up cozy. It's Nordic Tales, and this contains, you know, folk tales from the Nordic countries. And you may be thinking, surely you've already read these because you are Norwegian and you grew up in Norway. And yes, I assume I'm gonna be familiar with the Norwegian ones, but the other ones, I don't think so. Like, looking at the stories in here, I think there's a lot that I've never read. I really like reading these kinds of books though, and this one is also beautifully illustrated, so I think this is just gonna be like a treat to read. I really enjoy these kinds of stories, and yeah, looks really good. Looking at some of the Norwegian ones, I don't know if I'm gonna recognize all of them actually. I don't know what this is. Maybe when I actually read the stories I'll recognize them, but yeah, this just looks really nice. There's also a dragon on the cover, which is always good. And yeah, I think this is just gonna be a treat to read. The end papers are also beautiful. Then the last 3 books that I have are all in series that I'm reading, starting with The House Witch. And these books are just called The House Witch 1, The House Witch 2, like that's what they're named. And this is the second book. This is fantasy and it's set in this magical land, and we're following a house witch who becomes the royal chef at the royal castle. And in the first book he is a little abrasive in the beginning. He doesn't, like, he's not very friendly, but eventually he makes friends and connections, both domestic and royal. And the first book sets up for a lot of things, so I'm excited to see how it follows in this one. I really enjoyed the first book, especially the characters, the magic, and the food, so I'm hoping there's going to be a lot of that in here, and I'm excited to see where the story takes us. It also doesn't get much cozier than this cover, like it's so lovely. We also have The Weed That Strings the Hangman's Bag by Alan Bradley, and this is the sequel to The Sweetness at the Bottom of the Pie, which I think I read last year. These books are set in the 1950s, and we're following this 11-year-old girl who loves chemistry and solving murders. I'm not entirely sure what the mystery is in here. I think it's an old mystery that she ends up trying to solve, but I don't really know. We are following such a main character in these books though. Like, she has so much personality and she's a lot of fun to follow. So I'm excited to see what she gets up to in this one. The last one that I have is maybe the only one that I would sort of consider reading in summer, although I probably won't wait that long. It's The Curse of the Pharaohs by Elisabeth Peters, and this is the second book in the Amelia Peabody series. The first one is Crocodile on the Sandbank. And in this series, we follow Amelia Peabody, who is a woman in the Victorian age who is like an heiress, and she wants to travel the world. These books are like historical fiction, mystery, adventure. And in the first book, we follow Amelia to Egypt, where there's this case with like a mummy running around. And in this one, I think she travels back to Egypt to visit a friend, and the friend is convinced that her husband was murdered because of this curse or something. I'm not really sure, but I really like Amelia as a character, and I'm excited to read more about, you know, her and her world. There are some things that happen in the first book that I'm excited to see what happens with in this one. That's very cryptic, but if you've read the first book, you know what I'm talking about. Alright, that was the last book in my pile though. Now I'd love to know if you have any cozy books on your TBR that you're excited about, or if you have any cozy book recommendations. I'd love to hear about it. No matter what kind of cozy book it is, I'm interested in it. I think that was kind of it for today. As always, thank you very much for hanging out with me today, and I will see you soon. Bye!